week, and we just played all these games, and we both got more and more miserable, and I didn't recognize alcoholism. I didn't know it. I'd never lived with it, and so what happened is we finally, after 3 years, we decided that I moved home to my parents' house, and this is how crazy I'd gotten. So he asked me to his company Christmas party, and I don't know how some of you went to company Christmas parties, but they had to first go out at lunch and start drinking. Then they met at a bar after work to drink some more so they could get ready for the party. And you know, we don't give advice in Al-Anon, but when you know somebody's drank that much and they say, leave your car at the bar, it's really not a good idea, but I didn't want to fight that night, so I left my car. We go down to the party, which is by the beach, was 26 long blocks from my car. And when he fell on the dance floor in front of his bosses, we thought maybe it was time to leave. And so we drove down to the beach, and he said, get out of the car. You know, before Al-Anon, I never had choices. It never once occurred to me to, first of all, there were no cell phones. You had to go to a payphone. If you don't know what that is, Google it, and you'll find out. But and my best thinking said, I can't walk down a well-lit street because what if somebody sees me? So I go down, walking down this dark street to get home, to get back to my car. And this is where I didn't believe in a higher power when I got here, but this was like my first evidence of a higher power, even though I didn't recognize it. A man pulled up, and he said he needed directions. No, he said he needed, I think he said he needed his car. He had another car he said he needed directions, and I didn't know where he was going. And he said, look, obviously you're in trouble and you need to get to your car. He goes, I'll drive to your car. I won't touch you, and I have another car that needs to be jump-started if you'll help me. I have to tell you, I got in the car with that man. We drove to his, he had another car that needed to be jump-started. We tried to jump-start it, and the only thing he ever did was he asked me for my work phone number, and he called me the next day to make sure I got home okay. Now, even after all that, I drove back to my parents' house, which was 30 miles away, and I walked in, and my mom said, where have you been? He's been arrested for drunk driving. We have to go bail him out of jail. So we drive all the way back down there, and I didn't know anything about blackout drinking either. So when he said to me, why did you leave the party with the person I work with? And I said, that's not what had happened. He called me a liar in front of my parents, and I knew I was done. So now, since this is half alcoholics, I shouldn't say this. But the next day, he had those 3 magic words when he called me. I need you. So now I'm right back there because now he needs me. Now things are going to be different, and I'm right back. And then, but I'm forever grateful because, like I said, this was the company Christmas party. I'd moved home in November, and in January, my mother was killed in a car accident. And I'm so grateful today that I had that time at home. I was able to make amends to my mom. I was able to have that time with her before she passed. And I remember going back to work, and my mom had just died. This relationship was falling apart. And somebody said, what's wrong? You're not smiling. And I put on that phony smile one more time because I couldn't tell you I was dying. I said, I don't know. Must just be having a bad day, because I couldn't tell you what was really going on. And then this man called me, and he needed a ride to the emergency hospital. And they said he had hepatitis, and I think the hardest thing was I thought, I love this man, but I'm glad he's sick because he won't be able to drink. And when he told me he could drink a month later, I believed him, so anyway, so this went on for like another 6 months, and then Bruce and I worked together, and on his last day, he was quitting to start his own business. He saw me in the parking lot, and he asked me for my phone number, and I gave him my phone number, and we both lived about 40 miles from where we worked, and we got on the freeway, and he followed me all the way home. Thank God when I got off the freeway, he went left and I went right, because I didn't realize we lived around the corner from each other. I thought, oh my God, now I've given my number to a stalker, And so the next day I called up and I broke up with this guy, and then Bruce and I started dating, and on our first date he said, I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I thought, this cannot be happening to me again. And and he was 4.5 years sober, and I started going to AA meetings with him, and we were dating about a month, and he said, I'm going to speak at a meeting, do you want to come here? For those of you who are newer in AA, not a chick magnet for them to hear your whole story when you've only known them a month. you know, I was like, you know, and you know, and then when we were 3 months to the day after, our first date was November 14th, and 3 months to the day, which was Valentine's Day, he took me up to San Francisco, and he asked me to marry him. And he told me, first he told me that 3 months was a long-term relationship in AA. And I said, okay. But he told me that his sobriety would come first, and he would go to 4 to 5 meetings a week the rest of his life, and if I couldn't live with that, we couldn't get married. And I have to tell you, he's 46 years sober, and he still goes to 4 to 5 meetings a week. And he also told me that if God wanted us to be together, there was nothing I was going to do to mess it up. And if God didn't want us to be together, there was nothing I was going to do to keep us together. So if I gained 5 pounds, he wasn't out the door. But if I held him by the ankles and he was going to leave, he was going to leave. And so, you know, we got married, and we had a beautiful AA wedding, and the people that the bartender said we had the lowest alcohol bills they've ever had at a wedding. You know, and I started going to, his sponsor's wife took me to my first Al-Anon meeting, and I was smug, arrogant, and self-righteous. Oh man, I was so bad. The first thing they said was there were no children allowed. We didn't have any children, but I got a resentment. And then some lady said, my husband stepped over his socks today and I didn't pick him up. And everybody went, and I thought, oh my God, I must be in the wrong place. Besides the fact that they all seemed to me like they were between my age and dead. I mean, they were old. So, and you can't tell because I had my hair colored on Thursday. But anyway, so I went home, and it took me, I'm not recommending this. It took me 6 months to go to my next meeting. And then God took care of me because it was at St. John's Hospital, and I sat here, and a woman sat right where Bruce was, and she was younger than me or my age. And she said her boyfriend was 4.5 years sober, 5 years sober, and she'd never seen him take a drink. And I don't know what gave me the courage to say to her, are there meetings with younger people? And she said, Monday night I'll be in Marina Del Rey, I'll have a seat for you. So I showed up, and she goes, tomorrow night I'll be in Culver City, I'll have a seat for you. I showed up. Friday night I'll be at Chelsea and Wilshire, I'll have a seat for you. You didn't need to save seats at my meetings, but because she was saving me a seat, I kept coming. You know, and I did have, you know, Bruce was a great example. You know, he's always been involved in service and everything. So I knew from watching him what you needed to do. And so, you know, they asked me to be cookie person. I didn't know. I used to walk up and down the aisles to find the perfect cookies. I didn't know you don't fire the cookie person. They could care less what cookies I bought. But I've often said that if you don't want to take your own inventory, take a service commitment. Somebody will take it for you. And so they asked me at this meeting, and they used to have like big spread of fruit and everything. And, you know, I walked in there, and I knew all of you made better looking fruit platters than me. I don't know how I knew that, but I did. And so somebody said, can I help you? And I know you're supposed to say yes. And so I said, you can make my fruit platters. And she took my bags of fruit and poured them in a mound. I'm here to tell you, everybody ate the fruit. Nobody said what ugly fruit platters. And that was the first chink at my perfectionism, that I didn't need to be perfect. Nobody was expecting that of me. Like Bruce's sponsor used to say, if you think you're being pushed from behind, look, and it might be your own 2 hands. And you know, so I started that. Now, sponsorship. That was an interesting thing. I asked somebody to sponsor me who had 6 more months than I did in the program because I didn't want them to ask me to do things like go to meetings or work the steps. And so, you know, when I was a year in Al-Anon, Bruce informed me that no AA would go a year without having done a 4-step inventory, and I told him in Al-Anon we do it in our own way and pace. And but I was feeling guilty, so I had asked somebody that was 19 years sober. It's 19 years in Al-Anon to sponsor me, and I'm forever grateful. She was mean. She was mean. She was not nice to me, but she was mean. But I'm glad she was mean because, you know, she said things to me like, we're going to work the steps from 1 to 12 without skipping 2 to 11 in the middle. And, you know, when I got to her house with my 4-step, my 120-page autobiography that was so boring, I can't believe she didn't fall asleep. Anyway, I got to her house and she said, we're going to do the third step prayer. And she said, have you ever done it? And I said, yes, with Bruce. She goes, now you'll do it like an Al-Anon does it with another Al-Anon. And, we got on our knees and we said the third step prayer, and I read her my fourth step. And that was when the joy started, because she said the two best words, me too. Me too. Because I can tell you, we've all done different things, but we've all had the same feelings. Like my friend Jack says, if you haven't been homicidal or suicidal, then you need to go out there and do some more things. We all have had the same feelings, And then she said to me, I have made a list of character defects that I found in your inventory. I did not walk in there with any character defects. And so she said, are you entirely ready to have God remove them? Well, one of them was people pleasing. So of course I said yes, So we did the 7-step prayer together. And then she said, I also made a list of people you owed amends to. And so I came home and I had a list of my amends. And I just want to share a couple of my amends that changed my life. The first one was, I had written a letter to my mother, and I read it to her at her graveside. But, I had to wait till I could read her and say, I'm sorry, rather than, but if you hadn't done this, I wouldn't have had to do this, But when I could finally do that. And then I needed to make amends to my father. And, I told my father, I said my whole amends to my father. And all he said to me was, did I tell you I have a date Thursday night? And I realized that my amends was for me. It wasn't for him. But I also changed my behavior. We did not say I love you in my family. We just didn't do it. I mean, I knew my parents loved me, but we didn't say it. And so my sponsor said, let it begin with me. If you want him to say it, you need to start saying it yourself. So we hang up. I said, we're hanging up. I said, I love you. Nothing on the other end. He hangs up. I must have done this 10 times before he finally said, I love you too. And then we just started doing it like a habit. The other thing in my big amends to my mother and my father was when my father was dying of leukemia, my father came and lived with us. And I did all those things that we all say we can't do. I changed his diapers, and I knew it was more humiliating for him than it was for me. And I did, I did all those things. We did all those things. And Bruce had always said when we got married, I will never live in another house with 3 generations. But we did it because that's what we had to do. And, and I was there. My father didn't want to die alone, and I was there in the room with my sister, and I were there in the room. And I also had to let go of my family and how they react differently. The doctor says to my brother, my sister, and I, you need to go into your father and say, we are going to be fine if you go. You can go. Let go. I go in there, I do it. My brother goes in there. My older sister, who's 7 years older than me, falls on top of him on the bed and says, Dad, you can't leave. We need you. And I just thought, don't say a word. Don't say a word. That's, that she had to do what she had to do. And, so those were big amends to me. My other was to my ex-husband, and when I called him, my worst nightmare happened. His wife answered the phone. I thought, oh, she's going to think I want him back. And so, I'm like I'm blabbling on. I'm on a 12-step program and I need to, and she goes, I'll have him call you. And it took him like 2 days to call me. And when he called me, I told him, I said, I'm really sorry. My sponsor said, you don't know what he knows you did. Say, I am sorry for the breakup, my part in the breakup of our marriage. Do not say anything else. And he said to me, we were young and you don't owe me an amends. And then he said, and the hurt goes away. And he was the first person that confronted me with the fact I could hurt somebody. See, I was so busy being the victim, I didn't realize I hurt other people. And I've had to walk a lot straighter line since then. Now, my real amends to my ex-husband, because when we got the divorce, his family blamed him and everything. And his sister is an Al-Anon, and she's heard me speak, so she knows the whole truth. And except I don't say the part that he was boring when I speak when she's there. I say everything else, but I don't say that. So anyway, so when Bruce and I were married a year, we decided we were going to have a baby. And God had other plans for us, and we went through major infertility. And so it became obvious we weren't going to have a baby. I can't have children. And so I was really comfortable with adopting. My sister is my natural sister. My brother was adopted, and then I was, as my parents said lovingly, you were the accident that followed. And but we were grateful. And so Bruce wasn't comfortable with adoption, and my sponsor said his no was more important than my yes, which really made me mad. And he comes home from work one day and he says, I'm ready to adopt. And I said, really? He goes, yeah. At work somebody said, you don't give birth to a puppy and you love a puppy. And I thought, that is the most stupid thing I've ever heard. And I thought, but you know what? You taught me an Al-Anon when I get my way to keep my mouth shut. I said, great, Bruce. So we got somebody that worked part-time for me said that they knew somebody that was giving up. They worked part-time in a gynecologist's office, and they knew somebody that wanted to give a baby up for adoption. Would we want to talk to her? And we talked to her. She was 3 months pregnant. She chose us. She called us every week or two for her whole pregnancy, and she had a beautiful baby boy. And I quit my job, and life was going to be really good. And we had the nursery set up, and we brought the baby home. And 12 days later, I got a call when Bruce was at work that she had changed her mind and she was taking the baby back. And adoptive parents have no rights. I mean, that's the truth. So Bruce started driving home and he called his sponsor. And his sponsor met us at the house and he held us and he held the baby and he said the Serenity Prayer. And he said, God doesn't take something out of your life unless he's going to replace it with something better. But when you're in the hallway, it can be hell when you're waiting. And my friend Jack says, put up curtains because you don't know how long you're going to be in that hallway. And you know, I had to wake up the next morning for the first time, and I didn't have a baby to make me okay. I didn't have a job to make me okay, and I was just going to have to be okay. And so people said, you keep on trying. And so we went to another lawyer, and we got a call from a woman in Portland, Oregon, and she said that she had a 4.5-month-old baby boy, and would we be interested in adopting him? And we flew up to Portland, and we sat with her for 3 hours in the airport. And the next day, she came with Jason, and she came with her. She had a 2.5-year-old son, and they flew back down to LA with us to sign the paperwork. And we took Jason home, and I have to say, as much as it was a joyful time for us, one of the most painful times I've had in my life is when we took them back to the airport and watched her get on the plane with her 2.5-year-old, because I thought, what do you say to a 2.5-year-old when you're giving his brother away, you know? And it was just painful to watch. And so Jason is better than the first. Well, at least until he turned a teenager. Jason is he is bright off the charts, and I'm not just saying that. He has none of our genes, but he is bright off the charts. When he was tested for the gifted program, he was 8 years old, and the psychologist called me and said, "Well, we have a little problem." He goes, he has the thinking ability of a 12-year-old, but he's only got the verbal ability of a 10-year-old. I thought he's only 8. What's the problem here, you know? And so he has outsmarted us from the very beginning. That's all I can say. And he made us look really good in elementary school. He did everything they said. He was a straight A student. He made us look really good. And then he hit junior high school. And by 8th grade, he was flunking out of junior high school. And by this time, I'd stayed home for 10 years, and I started a second career. And so when we went into the meetings with his counselor and his teachers, his counselor would start the meetings, well, you know, his mother works and goes to school. And so we know who you're blaming here. And so it got really ugly in our house. And then I had a friend at work that said, I put my son in a private school, because by 8th grade he was flunking out of school. And you know, it's for kids that are gifted or near gifted, and they have a reason they're not succeeding in a public school, and he has ADHD. And so we went to look at the school. Bruce and I thought, for those of you old enough, when we walked out of the school, we had just walked out of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And of course, we walk out, and Jason goes, I feel so comfortable. And I'm like, no. I have to share with you, because my friend Michelle says this. Her son is sober, and, he'll say these things, and she'll think, where's he getting this from? And he finally said, you can bleep this out if you have to. He said, Mom, just think shit when I talk, simply how I think, and it's not how you think. So that's what I sometimes, when Jason's talking, I think in the back of my mind, shit, shit, shit. And so I don't say anything, But, we put him in this, we call our sponsors. We can't afford private school. Can you afford it this year? Yes. Well, you better hope that God's going to give you the money for it every other year. So we put him in this private school. We creatively financed. We took a second on our house. We did all that stuff. And high school was horrible. We used to fight about who had to be at work earlier because the other one had to get Jason up. And we knew that person would have a horrible day. No, I have a meeting. No, I have an earlier meeting. And our house was either silent or screaming and yelling. I mean, here's a kid that grew up in AA meetings. He knows everything he needs intellectually about the program. And he grew up in daytime babysitting Al-Anon meetings. And it was just a really dark time in our lives. And so he finally hits his 12th grade year, and we're thinking, and it's the Monday before graduation, and he calls and he says, before I share the story, I did change sponsors. I had that sponsor that got me through my steps and everything for like 10 years, and then I still was overburdened with responsibility. So I changed sponsors, and my sponsor at the time didn't even have an answering machine. I thought, God, she's not overburdened with responsibility. And she's like the funniest person there was, and she made me laugh at myself. And so, and she still makes me, like she'll say, if you were on the other end of the phone, you'd be laughing. Yes, but I'm not. So I call her that Monday. I said, oh my God, we've spent all this money and he may not graduate. And she says, did you do it for fun and for free, or did you have expectations he was going to graduate? Oh, I had expectations. She goes, well, you better have done it for fun and free. Talk to you later. Bye. What? And so, and then I call my sister, because they're coming from Las Vegas for the graduation. I said, there might not be a graduation. If you want to come for dinner, you can. She's screaming at me to write the papers, and I did that up till 10th grade, and I said, no. I said, he either will have the dignity to graduate by himself or he's not graduating. I'm not writing a paper. We had a call 3 hours before his graduation. Oh, he wrote the papers. He just thought it'd be funny if you guys didn't know. So, funny today, not funny back then when we have a whole house full of company waiting to go to his graduation. So, now, we tell him he needs to go to college. Bruce and I are the only college graduates in our family. He's going to go to college. He clearly tells us at 18 he doesn't want to go to college. We don't hear him. So, he found a private college out here in Utah, because he lived in Harriman, so I know it was somewhere out there. And now, if you're going to tell your kids you're going to pay for them to go to college, you need to add and get credits, because Jason knows how to go to college. He just doesn't know how to get the credits. He just drops out before the semester's over. So Utah doesn't work out. So then he says, I'm going to go to Humboldt. And someone says to me, you're going to send your kid to the pot capital of the world? All I think is, now maybe he'll graduate, So he went to Humboldt, he came back, he went to Humboldt, he came back. He brought a girl home with him and he married her, and that was a big mistake, and that didn't work. And so then he decides he's going to go to Utah State. Okay, this is my last hurrah. I don't even care anymore at this point. He went to Utah State for about a half a semester, and then I was done. Now, I have always heard that if God is trying to take care of the people in my life and I'm standing in front of them, then he can't, because all he sees is me in front of them. And during this time, Jason had started drinking a lot. And one of the times when he came home from college, I'm sure he was on something, but he went crazy and he knocked 2 holes in the walls, and he told, and Bruce said he was going to call the police, and he told Bruce that he would kill him before the police could get there. And I never thought our family would heal from that. We had a bag packed. We were going to leave the house, and then he calmed down and he said, I have to tell you something, but I'm afraid you're not going to love me if I tell you. He said, I've been smoking pot since I was 12 years old, but that's not what changed our relationship. And I knew better. I didn't say anything. We were all in the heat of the moment, and I didn't say anything. And so, he made this last-ditch effort. He went to Utah State, and then he came back. And then he was, we told him no drinking or smoking in our house. Now, a child that's that intelligent should know I pay for my garage, too. It's part of my house. But, and we would, have trash barrels just full of cans and bottles and all that. And it was such a sad time, and that was the first time. He always gave Bruce a cake at his meeting, and he was passed out, and we couldn't get him up, and we just went, and it was a dark time in our house, and I started going to parent-focused Al-Anon meetings, and that changed my life, because I learned things like wait for the question. Very rarely is there ever a question, but when there is, Bruce knows today, when there's a question, he can see me on the phone. And then I can answer, but I don't get in his face. And I had to learn to meet him where he was. And I also, so one of the things that happened during this time, a couple of things. First of all, a man that Bruce didn't know that well at his AA meeting said, when Jason was 18, "You have a son, don't you?" And he said, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you think he would want to do some work for me?" Here's Bruce and I pushing him to go to college. And Bruce said, "I'll ask him." Now, Jason has worked for that man on and off since he was 18 years old. He is now 37 years old. That man has made him a partner in the business. When he retires, he's giving him the business. And we thought we knew best. That man and his wife don't have 8 children. They have adopted Jason. They think he's his son. One day we showed up for Christmas dinner at a friend's house, and everybody keeps asking me about Jason's girlfriend. I thought, how does anybody know he has a girlfriend? And this guy's wife says to me, "He's my son too. I get to tell them." And I'm like, okay, whatever. So, while we were trying to manage, direct, and control things, God was taking care of him. The other thing we had to do was Bruce has a very close friend in AA that's an AA and Al-Anon, and he's also a financial planner. And we had gotten ourselves in a big financial mess, because I can tell you, throwing money at the problem does not fix it, And we threw more money at the problem than we had money. And Bruce said, "We're going to meet Alan in a restaurant, and we're going to share all our finances with him." I would have rather walked in that restaurant naked, because I thought, if he sees all the money we gave Jason. But you know what? This is how program works. The first thing he says to us is, when my son was in college, I went to visit him, and he had the cleaning lady cleaning his apartment, and I got home, and my wife was scrubbing the toilets, and I thought, what is wrong with this picture? I'm paying for him to have somebody clean his apartment, my wife. So we could tell him everything, and you know what? He told us what to do, and we were able to do that. So we were able to straighten out our finances. And then when Jason was 26 years old, God just told me it was time. And I said to him, "Jason, if we keep giving you money like we have been giving you, we're never going to be able to retire." From that day to this, he's never asked us for money again. Now, I wish I had done it when he was 19, but and I was able to retire last June. And, but what happened is, during that time, for 2 years, I wrote inventories about Jason. 2 years, and 2 things that came out. First, I got some compassion for him, because he never once drank at us. He did it because he needed to survive, and that's the only way he could survive. It had nothing to do with us. That child loves us. I will tell you a story I told somebody today. The way I looked at love was, flowers and this and that. When I was getting my master's degree, I said to him, "I need 2 things for you." This shows you where my ego still was. I said, "I need you to wake up and not give us a hard time tomorrow morning." My graduation was at 4 p.m, so this was not a hard request. And I need you to tuck in your shirt for pictures. Then you can untuck your shirt. And he didn't go to sleep all night because he was afraid he wouldn't get up. That's love. I didn't recognize before that was love. That's love. And after those 2 years, I realized that. The other thing was, I realized all that money we spent at college, because I had such a resentment, it was right here. And I was saying all the right things, but right here I thought, you say the wrong thing and I'm getting you. You know, I knew I had that in me, and I still had that anger. And after 2 years of writing that inventory, I thought at 18, he told us he didn't want to go to college. It was on me that we made him go and we paid the money. It wasn't on him. And all of a sudden I could give him that freedom to be who he was, and who he is. He does not drink anymore, so I don't know if this was just drinking that people in their teens and 20s do. It was a long time. It was painful. I still go to parent focus meetings because they've taught me how to be a better parent and how to mind my own business. And if it doesn't have my name on it, it's not my problem. And recently I heard God stands for grace over drama, because I loved the drama before, I don't anymore. And, and the things we talk about in parent focus meetings, May is the hardest time because everybody's coming in, oh, my kid just got accepted at Yale, my kid just got accepted here, and the parents at the parent focus meeting would say, your kid's going to Yale and mine's going to jail, and we just, it is what it is. And so I heard parents that said the same thing. I mean, we did everything. We did soccer. He did baseball. He did roller hockey. Oh my God. We even sent him to cotillion, which is probably why he drank. But I had to realize it wasn't anything that we had done. And when he went away to college, all these parents, these are the kinds of feelings that ate at me until I could share them with you. And everybody was saying, oh, I'm so sad I'm going to have an empty nest. I was like, I just wanted him to leave because it was so miserable in our house. And we contributed. It wasn't just him. And so we were living in the suburbs. I did all this inventory, and I realized that my heart was by the ocean, that's where my heart was. So, and our financial planner kept telling us we needed to downsize. So during the pandemic, because that's a smart thing to do, we moved, and we moved down by the beach, and there were no houses for sale. There were no houses for sale at that time. Our real estate agent would call us on a Sunday and say, guess what? Someone died last night in this house. Do you want to put a bid on it without seeing it? And I'm thinking, no, and so we were looking. We had 20 days to find our house. We have a 125-pound pit bull, which we knew nobody was going to let us rent with this 125. We have 20 days left, and someone said, look for signs, look for signs. So we look at this house, and it's on Arbor Avenue. So Bruce and I are like, AA, okay, there's a sign. And then we go to the next street over, which is Milton, which was the name of Bruce's sponsor for 35 years before he died. Okay, this must be the house. I don't know if it was, but, so we got the house. And we moved down there because Jason has his shop down there. Now, if you had told me all those years ago I would move by my son, I would have told you, oh, no. But that's how things change. And we have had a very interesting last 2 years. And, my friend Liza says, I'm having an AFCO, which is another effing growth opportunity that I didn't ask for and don't want. That's how I could say it in polite company. So my last year of school was, my last year before I retired was last year. And first my best friend and my sponsee of 40 years was diagnosed with cancer. And it was the most painful thing I've ever done, talking to her every day. And when she'd say to me, I can't say this to my family, but I'm afraid I'm going to die. And and it wasn't like when you say to me, oh, I'm afraid that this is going to happen. I could say, oh, false evidence appearing real, because I knew there was a real chance she was going to die, and the powerlessness of just listening to her and being with her. And she did pass last September, and it was so painful. So that was happening. Bruce was diagnosed with bladder cancer, and we had in like April, and we showed up, and as of 2 months ago, he was cancer-free. And and then I come home from work one day and I smell gas, and the gas company comes out and they tell us our forced air heating is condemned. And then he goes, and I need to check all your appliances, and they find a mushroom behind our washing machine. So now we have mold in our house. So then we have to, and you women will appreciate this. So they take my floor out, and they said, maybe she wants to keep the floor that's under here. It was peach swirls. No, I do not want to keep the floor that's under here, So we had to get new floors, and then they found it was in between. Anyway, it was a big mess. And so I finally retire in June, and then in October, Bruce had to have a valve replacement. And when he had the valve replacement, they told us there was a 5% chance he could have a stroke. And so he had the valve replacement, and the next day they sent him home. And that night, we were eating dinner, and he said, I said, do you want your knife? And he goes, I don't have a knife there. I didn't know he had lost his vision in his left eye. And then he went to bed, and like 3 hours later, he said, I don't know what's wrong, but you need to call 911. And so we took him to the emergency hospital, and he had a stroke on the right side of his brain, and he had lost his vision on his left side, and he didn't have feeling in his left side of his body. And it was a long, we never felt like victims. I've seen all my friends we all have our time in the dumper, whatever. And, I absolutely knew if he got no better, that he would be fine. And, he got back the vision in his left eye. And, but, I would sit there at the rehab place with him, and they'd show him a paper with all these different letters of the alphabet and tell him to count the H's. And I'd watch my husband, who has 3 degrees, not be able to find the H's on a piece of paper, and to just sit there it's okay, babe, we'll be okay. And, today he can read, he can do all that, but I'm his full-time caregiver. And I have to tell you, there are days I am not a vision for you. That's all I can say, I'm so grateful, Lance, that this was our first time we've traveled since he's had the stroke. It's been 5 months, and I was like crazy trying to figure out how are we going to do this, and I have a sponsee meeting every Wednesday night on Zoom, and one of my sponsees was leading, and she made the topic surrender. And I said, God, I have to surrender this trip. And you know what? It's been fabulous. Lance, Neil, Kenzie, Patty, you made us feel like family. We absolutely felt like family from the minute we got here. And now we know we can travel again. And yes, Bruce is poor. And we hadn't been in Ventura that long. And these guys his rehab was like miles away. His rehab was in Ojai, and we live in Ventura. 18 of them rode their bikes up on a Saturday morning and took the place over and gave him an AA meeting. They showed up, and these poor guys would show up, and there are 2 reactions you have when you have a stroke. You either laugh a lot or you cry a lot. Bruce is a crier. So these big brawny guys would walk in, and he'd be like, I'm so grateful you're here, and start crying, and they would I don't know what to do now, and we've learned to laugh at, this is his thing. Whenever he does something that he can't remember something, he'll go, I'm pulling the stroke card. Okay, honey, So, and you've just taught me, and what my program has always been very simple. I go to meetings. Today I go to Zoom meetings, and I go to in-person meetings. We go to a couples meeting once a month, where they ask you questions like, when you're in an argument with your spouse, can you see them through God's eyes? Oh, no. Or, do you have the same fight over and over and over again? Bruce has learned, I'll say to Bruce, I'll have this whole script in my head, and I'll tell him my part, and then he never says his part, so I'll have to say, excuse me, Bruce, you didn't read the script. The script said you were supposed to say this, So we've had to learn how to laugh at this. And one of the wives said, the husband said, my wife told me there's a slogan, and it's, And I'd never heard of it, and it's that if you look at things differently, they're different. And so we're all looking like, oh, we've never heard of that slogan either. It makes a lot of sense, but we'd never heard of it either. So I go to a couples meeting once a month. I go to my parent focus meeting. I go to a women's meeting, and I've always been active in service. Whether it's chairing meeting, we are very involved in conventions, and in fact, we have a convention in Ventura in 2 weeks, and that's where we love doing our service. And I just had to, this was really hard for me. I just finished a weekly commitment of getting the speakers for my parent focus meeting, and this is probably the least commitments I've had. So I am alternate GR for one of my meetings, and I am on this convention committee. And I thought, I sponsor a lot of women, and I can't do more than, I can't make those weekly commitments because I don't know every morning what it's going to be with Bruce. So, but I thought, I sponsor a lot of women, and it gives me more time to talk to them. And I have a sponsor. My sponsor is 89 years old, and sometimes she picks up the phone, sometimes she doesn't pick up the phone, sometimes she goes MIA. But she's been my sponsor for like 20 years, and I wouldn't change sponsors, but I do have a group that I can call if she's not available. And she is she's got over 50 years in Al-Anon, and she's just been a great inspiration to me. And so I do that. I show up on my meetings. I'm of service. And now Bruce and I, now Bruce is not retired. Bruce is 84 years old. And Bruce is not retired. And so he consults, and when he was in rehab, they told him, wait till January and decide if you're going to still go to work. And he had a trade show he wanted to do in February, so his boss said, get a scooter. He drove that scooter around. I followed him with a clipboard, and we got everything done. But then when it came last month to doing the work, it was really too hard. You would not know by talking to him, but he does have cognitive things he's still working on. And so we decided that we were going to tell his boss that March was his last invoice and he was retiring. His contract is up in June, and originally we said June. Well, here's Lynn and Bruce's will, here's God's will. So we called his boss and we said, so we're not going to give you an invoice in April. Bruce is going to retire. He said, so Bruce is not giving me an invoice in April, and you guys are going to do the show in May for me, and then he's going to retire? Yeah, that's what we said. Yeah, that's so he has one more month to work. And I've learned that, figure it out is not a slogan, that God's going to show me what we need to do. And I did not come in here with a God, but I know that I see God in all your eyes. And I see God when coincidences happen. Bruce gets the speakers for a Saturday night, You're Not a Glum Lot meeting. And he asked somebody to speak that he hadn't seen for like 10 years. And she came 2 weeks ago, and she goes, Bruce, how are you doing? And he said, well, I had a stroke. And she said, do you know I'm a stroke nurse? Now, it gets even better because nobody ever had Bruce see a neurologist. And when we saw his doctor, we said, his regular doctor a week ago Thursday, we said, shouldn't Bruce have seen a neurologist? And she gave us a look like, she wasn't going to say, yeah, he should have seen a neurologist. And so she said, yeah, I'll make a recommendation. And we called this lady, and she said, I work on a team with neurologists, but you won't get in till June, but I'll put your name in, I'll put a good word. We got a call last week that they had a cancellation April 26th, and they're going to get him in. That's God working in our lives. And I always wondered what my purpose was going to be out there. Was it going to be my job? Was it going to be a mother or whatever? And, my purpose is to carry the message. That's all. And I'm up here today because it's my turn to share my story. You all have a story, and it's going to be another day. It's going to be yours. It's not because I'm so wonderful. It's because it's my day to share my story. And, and what we do now every morning is we get our bagel and coffee, and we drive down to the marina, and we sit there and we read Bruce's 24-hour day book and my 3 Al-Anon books. And we do the 3rd step prayer, and we do the 7th step prayer, and we do the serenity prayer, and we do St. Francis of Assisi's, and we do Just for Today. and we spend an hour and we get centered. Now, for those of you who work, when I was getting up at 4:45 in the morning to work, I'd speed read my one day at a time, and then I would get in the car. So we have the leisure to do that now, and that's been a new part of our program. And then we talk about what it says, and you know, I'm a big believer in writing. I've worked the steps a lot of times, and you know, yes, when I'm having a good day, I don't say, gee, let me look at my character defects. But when my face is to the ground one more time, and I'm doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, I put the pen to the paper, and I look at my part. And you know, we have a life, you know, far beyond our wildest dreams. You know, we have a good relationship with Jason. Is it perfect? No, because if you ask Jason a question, you better have a half hour for the answer. And then Jason decided recently that he should build us a house and build himself a house next door, and he will take care of us. And I'm like, that is a very kind offer, honey. But for right now, we'd like to stay in our own house. Thank you very much, you know. But you know, he checks on us every day, and I couldn't ask for more than that, and it's because all of you gave us a program of living. You taught us, and the biggest thing you taught us is how to laugh at ourselves. I mean, I took life so seriously, and that what's my business and none of my business. Anything going on with you guys is none of my business, you know. I don't give my sponsees advice when they say, should I divorce him or not divorce him? I just say, I'll love you and support you in whatever you do. I don't know what they should do. And you know, I don't want you to think that, you know, like everybody thinks, oh, you guys have been married 41 years, and yes, we still hold hands, and yes, I still love him more than anything. But you know what? There have been tough times too. You know, a year ago, Bruce said to me before he had the stroke, I may wake up one morning and I'm not going to know how to do this. You need to sit down with me, pay the bills, look at where all our money is. Now, I know how to write a check and pay the bills, but Bruce is a little on the OCD side, and he's got a spreadsheet, and you have to change the number from black to green after you've paid the bill, and, you know, and I would just like, and so I started doing that. We used to, one of our friends called it, oh, we had date night, we paid the bills, I said, you know, and so we, you know, we did that. So one night he was in the hospital and he couldn't remember who I was or anything, and I thought, oh my God, it's happening. So I can do that now. So now for alcoholics, this is like probably your worst nightmare. He made me CFO of our finances. So now I do all the bills, and I do all that, and I assured him, and I showed him on paper that he's 84, he could retire, and you know. So life is good. Thank you again, you guys. We have had a fabulous time. We have eaten so much. We've had so much fun, and thank you all so much for listening.